So let's get started. So first of all, happy Imbolg. Imbolg blessings to you all. I hope you're all doing well, and I hope you're enjoying the spring as it moves in. This is a lovely time of the year because it's I got a little message popping up here now. Haha, happy Imbolg Emer. um, yeah, so spring is moving in, and I've noticed now it's like it's light by 8 a.m. in the morning now, which is fantastic for night owls like myself, because really are not happy with early mornings in the dark. They're very difficult. Um, and all around us, everything is springing into life everywhere. So we're going to start off with just a little bit of a talk about Imbolg and what it means, and all the rest. As many of you know, Imbolg is one of the four quarter festivals celebrated by the Irish here, celebrated here since the Iron Age, or probably a little bit actually older than that, most likely Bronze Age. Samhain is first dated to about 5,000 years, so they're all probably around 5,000 years old or thereabouts. And Imbolg is an interesting one. Imbolg has two spellings. First of all, there's Imbolg and Imbolg. They're interchangeable actually. They're not. There's no correct spelling of it. Imbolg essentially means in the belly of the ewe, and a ewe, of course, being a female sheep, because it's this time of the year that the animals will begin to lactate. And that was very important to our ancestors because it's a serious food source. And they're not the only ones as well. As any of you will remember, if you did a walk with me, you'll remember that Bealtaine 9 months ago is a big fertility festival. And there'll be lots of fun going on in the bushes. So it wouldn't just be in the ewe's belly, it'd be in a lot of women's bellies, which are getting very big at this point, and they'd be getting ready to breastfeed and all the rest. So there's milk everywhere. Um, and then, as well as that, you have this kind of the idea that the rivers are swelling and the rain is falling down. So there's a swelling of liquids pretty much everywhere. A lot of spring tides in the spring as well. A spring tide is not a spring as in a seasonal thing. It's kind of springs forward very quickly. So lots of that going on. So Imbolg or Imbolg comes from the old Irish spelling. The really old Irish spelling is the one with the C, and modern Irish is the one with the G. So Imbolg or Imbolg, either way, it works. It works out. Um, um, don't get too hung up on the spelling. Now, we also call it St. Bridget's Day as well, but I'll be coming to Bridget later because, to be honest, you can't talk about Imbolg without talking about Bridget. And I know she is a saint, but she actually isn't. She was kicked off the saint list by the Vatican in 1969, along with Saint Nick. So she's not actually a saint. They kicked her off because she was too pagan. But she has her origins as a goddess, and she is intrinsically linked with Imbolg. But before we move on to Breed and Bridget, um, some of the things just to keep in mind as I'm talking about Bridget, some of the things to keep in mind would include the fact that um, Imbolg is traditionally marks the start of the sowing season. So barley, oats, wheat, they would have during the Iron Age and upwards. February, March would have been when they were being planted. Of course, the foraging season starts as well in February because everything starts to come alive. Right now in Courtown Woods, we've got the little bits of wild garlic popping up over the ground. A little bit early, but it's nice to see all the same. And a few other little things coming alive. On the trees, the leaves are starting to bud out. So it's the foraging season is starting. Plus, it was the start of fishing season, sea fishing. I mean, we are an island here, so sea fishing would have started. It would have been kind of the winter storms, the worst of them would have passed by February. You still stay close to the coast, but fishing starts all the same. So you fishing, you have grain, and you foraging, all food, and they all kind of kick off around about this time. Now, Saint Bridget. I think we'll start with Saint Bridget because there's an awful lot of information out there online about Saint Bridget. Um, she is a patron saint of Ireland, along with Columkill and St. Patrick, of course, as well. But Bridget, as a woman, was very interesting. Bridget was born sometime around the mid uh, 14, 450s, mid 450s. Um, she was a daughter of a druid and a slave woman. And they say that when she was being born, that her mother gave birth to her while sitting in the threshold of their home, in the door frame of the home, and she held on to the oak door frame for support as she birthed Bridget. That is quite significant as well, because if you remember, the oak is the father of the forest, is one of the most powerful trees in the forest, and for the druids it was one of the most important trees. And to be standing in a doorway, in an oak doorway or doorway, means that any negative energy attached to you falls away. So she's born incredibly pure, but pure in the old way, not in the new way. She was said to have been fed by a cow with red ears, a red-eared cow. Now, a red-eared cow, without going into the details, a red-eared cow is very much linked with folklore to do with fairies and things like that. It's she's a it's a really big thing, fairies and red-eared cows. You kind of avoid them if you can. Um, she was said to have enchanted a boar that followed her about. And boars are wild pigs. They're not very tame. They're not very nice animals. They're quite aggressive. And so she was able to tame this boar and bring it around with her. As she got a little bit older, um, her father wanted to marry her off. So she disfigured herself so that she could, no man would come near her. And this worked. This worked very well for her. No man did come near her, and she was able to dedicate herself to the church. But later on, then she was able to fix herself. She's got some stories that take in kind of her, that show a extreme kindness. I'm thinking there now. Message. Happy Imbolg from Roscommon. Thanks, Amy. um, she was extremely kind. She was the kind of person that turned water into beer for lepers. She is said to have given to magicked away a fetus from a woman who'd gotten herself into a bit of trouble. Um, she when she asked the chieftain of Leinster, the High King actually, when she asked the High King of Leinster to give her some land to create a monastery, he laughed at her. Number one, because women aren't supposed to have monasteries; they weren't allowed in the early Middle Ages. And number two, because the gall of this woman asking for land. And he jokingly said he would give her enough that her cloak could cover, enough land that her cloak could cover. And she said, "Great, yeah, no problem." And she flicked her cloak out, and it just expanded and expanded and expanded and expanded for acres and acres and acres. And she built her monastery on it. And shockingly, she filled her monastery with both men and women, which was very risque back in those days. And then she went on to deliver mass. She was a priest, and not only was she a priest, because she'd founded a missionary or a monastery, she actually became a bishop. Um, and as many of you know, the Catholic Church, or the Christian Church rather, as it was back then, the Christian Church is a very patriarchal society. Doesn't really allow women in at all, and it was worse years ago. So this is in the early Middle Ages when women were not absolutely allowed into the church, and so she was a bishop who delivered mass and ruled over both men and women. So that's incredibly rare of her. Now, St. Bridget's crosses, the St. Bridget's cross, this is it here. This is one that I made about 2 days ago. It's getting a little bit dry now. But the St. Bridget's Day cross, well, this was said to have been made by St. Bridget when she was converting a chieftain to Christianity on his deathbed. These reeds would have been thrown on the ground. This is the reeds here. They're river reeds, nice and green. Um, Very easy, growing massive abundance in anywhere wet. So you'll find them everywhere in Ireland. But these reeds would be thrown on the ground of your house, and they would cover the ground, acting a bit like a carpet. If chickens wandered in and pooped, then you could just shake the reeds and the poop would go down in between. It was a way of keeping the house clean, not by our standards today, but there would have been an abundance of reeds on the floor. And it said that she picked up the reeds and she began to weave them, and she wove them into a cross. And this is how she converted this chieftain. And ever since then, we have been making reeds to remember Saint Bridget. Um, and this is a very iconic Irish symbol. Any of you who visited Ireland will have seen it all over the place. You will have seen it in jewellery and things. This appeared on our money. It appeared on our passports in the past, and it was the logo. I don't think it still is, but I know it was the logo anyway for our national television service as well. So the St. Bridget's cross is something that we all grew up with. And if you grew up in Ireland, chances are you made these in school as well. If you were in, certainly if you went to school with the nuns, you would have made them. So these are a lovely way to remember Saint Bridget. A lovely way to remember Saint Bridget and remember how she was one of the people who brought Christianity to Ireland and spread the word. When in her monastery, in her abbey, um, she was said to have had a large maze made with yew trees, and in the center of it was a lantern that burned, that was tended by the people that served under her, and that light was like a perpetual flame, and that perpetual flame continued to burn for centuries and centuries. And today it is still burning and it is still there. And it's the nuns that look after it. And it's not no longer in the Yew Maze, unfortunately. It's in the actual cathedral, actually, as it is now. The cathedral itself, the flame is in there. But it's a lovely thing because this year it's actually 1,500 years exactly since her birth. Um, so it's her 1,500th birthday, and it's marvelous to think that that Bridget, this powerhouse of a goddess, or excuse me, saint, was able to it's still remembered so well. But if you think about Saint Bridget and you think about who she was, and you think about all the stories, you've got this woman, a woman who could control the wind and the rain, who could enchant animals, could transform water into beer, could heal people, could give abortions. She was also said to have had a partner who was a female whom she slept with every night, whether they were um, asexual partners or a lesbian couple, who knows, or just friends, who knows. But she defied absolutely everything that a woman was supposed to be at that time. She was exactly what you were not supposed to do. She just figured herself so she wouldn't have to get married. She stood up to the king. She demanded land. She got the land. She built an abbey and a monastery on it. She went on and to preach mass. She ordained people. Everything a woman shouldn't do. And I think that's why, in recent years here in Ireland, anyway, in recent years, she has become a bit of a figurehead for women across the island, because this is the time of women. It is our time. There's an awful lot of changes going on, And she has become that figurehead for the empowerment of women today. And as I mentioned earlier, she isn't a saint outside of Ireland. She's The Vatican decided in 1969 to review a whole load of saints. The only two I recognised on the list, there was Saint Christopher, who was the patron saint of travellers, and Saint Nick, Santa Claus, and Saint Bridget, and the three of those were dropped along with a load of other people. But Saint Bridget was dropped because, well, she didn't represent the church. She didn't represent anything about the Christian church or the Catholic church later on, and so they got rid of her. But she is still a patron saint in Ireland, so make that of you what you will. Now, you'll hear an awful lot of people say St. Bridget starts her journey as Breed, a goddess, and I say it as well. But the reality is that the St. Bridget and the goddess Breed are very, very, very different. For Breed, we're talking about going back in time, not hundreds of years, but thousands upon thousands of years. So, like, if you look at society and look at who we are and look at when we first started having religious beliefs of some sort, it's very hard to determine exactly how long she goes back. But most scholars think somewhere around 10 to 12,000 years, if not longer. Um, I would tend to push for further back, just because I think she would. But even if we take that far back, we're talking about a landscape that was very different to the one we live in today, and a world that was very different. It was wild, it was primal, and the ice sheets were still only receding, huge glaciers still there. And I think the goddess Breed, well, she is as wild and as primal and as untamed as that landscape. I was talking yesterday, and I with a group of people in Kildare, and I was saying to a lady that, that landscape is unrecognizable to us today. We live in a world where most of the planet now either has people on it or had people at some point. There's pockets of jungles and things like that, but for the vast majority of us, we never get to see the rainforests or the deserts or up into the snowy South Pole or North Pole. What we see about us is our reality. And for the vast majority of us, our reality is houses, roads, fields, supermarkets, trees, towns, villages, cities. So for us, and I include myself in that, for us, it's unimaginable the world that Breed started out in. Breed was there when the ice sheets started to recede. Breed was there, like, when the storms were so rough and so bad, and that shelters were so delicate that one bad storm could literally destroy a village, destroy a whole encampment. She was there when they talk about the big floods. Like most academics now, when they look at the flood stories from most religions, they all seem to be centered around certain parts where there was large populations of humans, and these areas were often valleys, and these valleys, as the ice melted, the sea levels rose and these valleys flooded. Breed was there at that time. That was the world she lived in. When we first started farming, when we foraged the first seeds and put them back in the soil and watched what happened, somebody had to do that. Somebody had to gather the seeds, had to figure out that if you leave a plant long enough, it goes to seed, and to figure out to pick the seed and place it on the ground. It's a no-brainer now, but somebody had to figure that out, and Breed was there at that time. If we look at even things like artwork and things like that, the first cave paintings, the first music. They say the first music may have been developed by people trying to mimic the sounds of nature. That was when Breed was there. This is a wild, different place to us. And when we look at the height that they say bridges they cross, we can get a glimpse of that, a glimpse in that of the past. Because there is another interpretation of this. If we take the seed in the center, place it there in the middle, under the ground, and then we weave a ploughed field around it, that diamond shape is often found on Neolithic and even Mesolithic rock art depicting fertility goddesses. And that diamond pattern shape with the little lines and the little knobbly bit in the middle is situated over the womb. It depicts the womb. And then you take the four elements. You take fire and water and sun and earth. And you all together, they feed that little seed in the center. The sun beats down from above. The rich, fertile oil nourishes the little seed. The winds blow in and it brings in the rain. All the things we need to grow food. And if you think about 10,000 years ago, when we first started growing wheat and oats and barley, it may have made sense to our ancestors to make something like this as an appeasement, as a plea, as a charm, as some way of harnessing the energies, to gift it to the gods, or the goddess as it was, to allow her to fertilize the soil, to allow her to grow it. And remember I said Breed's connected with the water. She could control the rain, she could control the wind, she had her fire, eternal flame burning. All of these elements are always creeping back up again and again and again with St. Bridget. So Breed would have had these elements as well, because we all have these elements. Because when you stood in the woods with me and I made you take a deep breath and stamp your feet and rub your hands and lick your lips, you had all of the elements in you. And we need all of these elements when planting a little seed. So perhaps this little cross is actually one of the oldest superstitions or traditions that we have. And the thing is about Breed, we talk about Breed being the goddess of things. She's the goddess of single mothers. She is the goddess of poetry. She is the goddess of blacksmiths. She is the goddess of lots of things. But I think actually Breed is more than that. She's the goddess of everything. In fact, she's not the goddess of anything. She just is. She's the everything. Because Breed is this eternal mother figure. And not like a lovely, matronly, lovely mother, a raw, primal mother who births out children like they're mountains and rivers. She is the mountains and rivers. She is the rain. She is the crops. She is the animals. She is the plants. She is the fish. She is us. She is everywhere. She's quite magical. I think you'd agree. Now, just on the high crosses, or on the crosses, I know some of you will have made these before, but just for those of you who haven't, in your ebook there is a link to a colleague of mine, a guy called Michael Fortune. He is he's a local folklorist, and he has a little video on showing you how to make these. Excuse me, lads, I'm having so much technical difficulties tonight. It's not even funny. Hang on there. Apologies. So yeah, there is a little video there showing you how to make them. You can make them out of anything. If you don't have access to a river and the reeds, you can make them out of straw, out of any sort of kind of a tough grain. You can make them from willow branches, softened willow branches, or young willow branches. Um, you can make them out of pipe cleaners. They're quite fun as well. I've seen people make them out of loads of things. So you don't have to have river reeds. And a trishkel. This is called a trishkel. It's a triple goddess cross. You've the maiden, the mother, and the crone here, or you have Breed and her two sisters, Breed and Breed and Breed. They were all called Breed. Um, I'll come to that in a moment. But really easy to make, made in exactly the same way. You just omit one arm, and they have they're really pretty. I think they're really nice. So have a go, have a go. Now I'm going to read a little bit from a book here that I have. It's quite an important little story because we can't talk about Breed without going back to the very earliest story, and this is the very earliest story that we have. There's a little bit of artistic interpretation going on here. It is a little bit of an inspired story because the oldest stories, obviously, we don't have all of them, and some of them are not in the best condition as well. So Old Irish doesn't translate very well, very easily. So let's have let's have a go. In the beginning of time, when the world was dark and quiet, a great tree grew from the new soil. It was the tallest and strongest tree that ever was, and it was called the Billa, the sacred tree. It was an oak. The waters from above nurtured and cherished this great tree. The waters were called Dana. Through the conjunction of Dana and Billa, there grew two giant acorns, and eventually the weight of them caused them to fall to the ground. From the first acorn sprang the Dagda, the good god. From the second emerged Briganta, or Brigid, the exalted one. The Dagda and Brigid gazed upon their new world in awe. They chose to create order in the world and populate the beautiful place with the children of Dana, the divine mother goddess that had nourished them from the beginning. Breed and the Dagda took to a fertile valley, one that faced outward to the western sea, where the waters of the divine mother Dana would nourish the land on which they lived. They named these waters Danivius, known forever after as the mighty Danube. Breed and the Dagda built the four greatest cities the world had ever known: Phalius, Gorius, Phineus, and Murius. In these cities the children of Dana would thrive for all time. These children named the Dagda as their father, and father of all gods, and Brigid was the wise mother, having taken the knowledge of the world from the sacred Billa tree, the oak. Brigid was hailed for teaching the children of the Dana healing, craftsmanship, and poetry. But most of all, she showed her children that true wisdom was first garnered from the feet of Dana, the mother goddess, and only where the water meets the land. This is from a book called Bridget by Courtney Webber. It's a lovely book. If anybody wants to take notes, that is a really, really lovely book to get. It's full of information about the Celtic goddess, less so about the priest or the nun. So you can see there that Breed basically starts her journey in the first new soils, which is wonderful. And the Dagda, of course, he's the guy, some of you will have got the mention, some of you may not on the tours. He's the guy with the massive penis that drags along the ground behind him with an oak club that he can hit you with and knock you over and then hit you and bring you back to life with again. Very lovely character. But Bridget, as a goddess, she's there at the very, very, very start. Now, Breed was said to have come to Ireland along with the Dagda and the rest of the Tuatha Dé Danann, and they settled here in Ireland, and they ruled here for 300 years. Now, during their time here, they had to battle another tribe, a tribe called the Fomorians. Now, the Fomorians basically represent the chaos of the universe, the chaos of the world. They were a vicious race of people. They were sea pirates, and they were led by a man called Balor of the Evil Eye. And Balor, he was a cyclops essentially. He wasn't born a cyclops, but he did. He became a cyclops because he had accidentally looked down. Well, it wasn't accidentally. He was told not to, but he did it anyway. Looked down onto some druids who were kind of brewing up a potion of evil stuff in an evil potion, and the smoke went into his eyes. His eyes merged into one giant eye, and then he was able to just cast his eye out, and whatever he looked at, it withered and died in front of him. A very nasty character. And and these guys, the Fomorians, they were said to have lived off the coast of Donegal, and they constantly attacked any of the tribes that lived in Ireland, not just the Tuatha Dé Danann. There were other tribes they attacked as well. And the Tuatha Dé Danann were determined to defeat these guys. So there was a battle, but unfortunately in the first battle, their king was badly injured. Nuada was his name. And Nuada lost his arm in battle. Now the laws of Ireland, the Brehon laws, the same laws of the neighbourhood that the trees are categorised in, under those laws, the Brehon laws say that no king can have a blemish anywhere. You couldn't even have a little bit of red, broken veins on your cheeks. No king could have a blemish. And so as a result, he had to step down. And a new king had to be found. Now here's where Breed comes into the stories, because it was decided that what would be a very good idea would be that if perhaps Bridget or Breed married somebody who was half Fomorian, half this evil race, and half Tuatha Dé Danann. It was your bog standard peace treaty, basically, through marriage. And so that's exactly what happened. She married Bress. Bress the Beautiful, he was known as. And oh my goodness, he was gorgeous. Absolutely gorgeous. He was said to have been that good looking that anything good in the world at that time was held to his standard. As such, like for example, this kitchen is this cushion here is as beautiful as Bress. The weather out there, it's as beautiful as Bress. Apparently, he was absolutely gorgeous. So, lucky Breed. But unfortunately for Breed, he wasn't as nice as he was good looking. In fact, he was said to have been completely awful. He was bitter, he was greedy, he was just a snide little bully of a man. Now, Breed and him went on to have a child, and the child's name was Ruadán. And Ruadán loved his mother, but he loved his father, and like any boy, wanted to make his father proud. And there was no making Bress proud. Nothing would please Bress. Bress instead had focused on all the things he didn't have, and he became very bitter as a result. All the things he wanted and didn't have, and he started putting a tax onto people. A tax, a third of all of their wheat, a third of all of their dairy, and a third of all of their children, which will be collected at Samhain and sent over to the Fomorians. Again, this is thought to be some sort of reference to the idea that that the Fomorians were the wild aspect of the world, of the nature at that time, and perhaps a third of the crops were lost, or um, a third of the milk was lost, and a third of their children may not have survived each year. But anyway, this couldn't continue. This couldn't continue at all. And so there was another battle. And on this battle, the Fomorians were finally defeated. But unfortunately, Ruodon, Breed's child, was killed in battle. And poor El Breed, she when she discovered and she ran out onto the battlefield and found his body, apparently she let out a scream, a cry scream that went on and on and on, and it swirled around the island 3 times and it mixed with the wind. It's called keening, and keening is a particular type of crying. And keening is, you may see it in kind of the Middle Eastern countries. Some of the women will keen there, but it was actually banned here in Ireland much later in history now. It was banned by the church later on. But keening was still practiced out west for a very long time. But she was the first woman to keen. Um, and I think, when you look at the story, that particular story of this woman who basically had handed herself over to her tribe, sacrificed herself to her tribe to marry somebody who was known to be cruel and cold. She sacrificed herself a little bit there. And then she lost her child to her husband's dealings because, to be honest, her son would not have died only for the fact that her husband, Bress the Beautiful, had directed his son to kill his grandfather, to kill a number of the Tuatha, in fact, and to kill the Dagda himself. And it was in this attempt that Govnu, the Tuatha blacksmith, um, basically stopped him, threw a spear at him, pierced his heart, and that was the end of poor El Ruadon. So she sacrificed her child unnecessarily as well. Um, After that, she kind of disappears from the stories. She doesn't appear in too many. But there's many, many people that believe that breed represents the sacrifices that people had to make to civilize the world that we're in, basically, to give up on all of the you know the taxes that we had to pay, because she ended that. So there is a civilization which ties in very much with the idea of them being born from a new world on a new soil and creating these 4 different cities and civilizing, in a way, the world at that point as well. So Bridget and Breed, intrinsically linked in every aspect. Um, so when we talk about celebrating Saint Bridget, what we're talking about really is we're talking about celebrating that aspect of ourselves. Whether it's the maiden, the mother, or the crone, it's celebrating that aspect of ourselves that has managed to make sacrifices, but also the times when we've stood up for what we believed we deserved, what we believed we had earned and was our right. So it's a wonderful opportunity to sit back and think about the past 12 months and think about the things that you found difficult, that you had to give up. For me personally, in the last 12 months, some of my children have left home and they've emigrated. That was very painful for me, letting go of my girls. It was bittersweet. We all knew the day was going to come, um, but it was sad all the same. I lost some other family members this year as well, and I lost some cats, some cats that have been loyal, faithful, furry friends for almost 20 years, dying of kidney disease. Um, 3 of them in quick succession. So, there's Dylan. She's saying they miss us too. Um, so lots of personal sacrifices have to be made this year, which are always aren't always easy, and like on a different level as well. There's certain sacrifices. I'm trying to give up smoking again. It's my one guilty habit left. Um, there's lots of sacrifices we have to make for good or for bad. And then there's the other side of it, the challenges that are the things that I feel like I've earned this year, the things that I feel like I've I've done better at this year. Um, my throwing my cloak out over the land moments. Um, and this year, there's been a few of those for me as well. I've worked in places that I had wanted to work at, that I set out to work at a couple of years ago. I've ticked those boxes now. I've visited some places that I wanted to visit across Europe. I have ticked those boxes now. I'm quite proud of myself. I've been in Brussels, I've been in Amsterdam, Bordeaux, Glasgow. Quite the jet setter this year. Um, so we look back at what we have given up and what we have brought in to our world. And that's very much the essence of Imbolg. And that's very much the essence of what we do at this time of year. So I'm picking up the cross again because I talked earlier about our ancestors growing crops using these. And this is a really cool way to make a little manifestation, uh, spell cast totem here. Essentially, if you're going to make these, when you pick up your first read, you spend a little bit of time thinking about what seed you want to grow this year. What would you like to have in your life this time next year? And then you begin to weave it. And as you weave it, you will grow the little field for your little seed to live in. And then you'll have to tie up each arm. And as you tie up the arms, you imagine the fire, the energy of fire going into it. You imagine the energy of air going into it, of water going into it, and finally of earth going into it. And with all of these four elements, your little seed, your little dream, your little aspiration will take life. And then you can hang this somewhere that you'll see it regularly, maybe the kitchen or your bedroom. Traditionally, they're hung over the fireplace or over the front door, somewhere that you see it regularly. By Bealtaine, you should see the first shoots of this dream come to fruition. By Lunasa, or at the very latest by Samhain, you will start to see, you will be able to harvest your dream. It's a really lovely thing to do. And what you can do with it as well is you can make it as part of a gathering, of a feast. Because unlike Lunasa and Bealtaine and Samhain, which tend to have a big party aspect about them, Imbolg is much more quieter. It's much more of a family affair. It's quiet because, well, probably because the weather's a bit crap still around this time of the year. Um, it's not great. It's still cold. It's still damp. Daylight's still not great. So it would be a family affair. And when at the very start, I talked about how at Imbolg, this is where the grain is placed in the sea, in the ground to start. The oats, the barley, and things like that. The fishing season starts, and milk, huge part of it. Now, you may not be aware of just how important milk was here, but milk, you know, um, we do love our dairy here in Ireland, and we have done for centuries. Everything was based upon cattle, and everything was based upon dairy. And so, perhaps before you sit down to make your little cross, you have a feast with your closest family members. And in this feast, if finances and convenience allows, I would suggest maybe seafood, some sort of sustainable seafood, because remember, you are worshipping a goddess of the earth here. So you don't want to get something out of season or something that's endangered. So try and get something sustainable. Um, Maybe some bread, the grains, porridges, and things like that. Although that's a bit crappy for dinner. Uh, I would probably go with maybe making a batter with flour. And because she turned the water into beer, maybe making it a beer battered fish. Nice supper there. Um, Perhaps go out and get some of the first greens of the season and have it with your fish, depending on where you are, of course, in the world. I know some of you watching here tonight or will be watching this that are down in Australia and New Zealand. So, of course, it's completely different for you guys because you're celebrating Lunasa down there. Um, but think about what is seasonal in your and freely available in your particular region. You do not need to copy from Ireland. That's not necessary at all. Instead, what you need to focus on is the fact that this is a goddess of the earth, and you want to celebrate a goddess of the earth by essentially giving her, eating the food that she is providing to you in your landmass at this time. So if you're living somewhere that, it was said to me the other day, somebody I know who was in Spain, and she said to me that the oranges are in season right now. What a wonderful way to have Mark Imbolg to eat oranges. How lovely is that? So there's plenty of ways that plenty of foods and drinks. Somebody else yesterday mentioned the grains, and it was a whiskey event I was at. So whiskey, you could argue. Certainly beer. I mean, as I said, Bridget transformed some water into beer, so beer, absolutely. But there's loads of things you can do to bring in a feast, because remember, these 4 quarter festivals, at the core of them, the real core of them, it's about food. It's about survival and food. What they are growing, or what is harvesting, or what they have put away for the long winter. Um, so at this time of the year, foraging, fishing, it's all kicking off. And dairy, of course. Hello there. Wasn't that a very interesting evening? And apologies again for the nightmare that is IT technology and all of that. And I am so bad at it. But look, I'm very good at plants and trees, and here I am now, back in my natural environment. Isn't technology amazing? Behind me there is the Kilbride. Just down from the Kilbride High Cross in the woods is the Ballinatray Bridge. It was one of the third largest bridges in Ireland when it was built, and built by my ancestors, along with many of my neighbours' ancestors back in the famine days. Beautiful spot in Courtown Woods. But anyway, that's not why I'm here. I'm here because afterwards, all of you shy people who didn't ask questions on the night bombarded me with messages. So I decided to record this second little section to answer some of those questions. So first of all, Aisling, yes, you were brave on the night, but to go back to what you were saying, what you asked about something called a brat brideogue, and a brat brideogue is a piece of fabric, typically something natural fibers, because it is earth worship, so you don't want polyester. So some piece of linen or cotton or wool or something like that, and it's left outdoors the night before St. Bridget's Day, or the night before Imbolg Eve. The idea being that the goddess or the saint passes across the land that night, bringing spring in about the place, bringing new beginnings and life, and that life force. She imbues the land with this life force on Imbolg Eve. And so by leaving something out, the essence of the goddess will be captured in the dew. And so the dew soaked rag then the following day becomes a healing rag. The idea being that if you had like a sore throat or a headache or something like that, you can take it and place it against the affliction or the wound or whatever it might be, and the breed's healing essence will cure you, essentially. And as was mentioned in the group chat on the night, some people like to use a scarf for this, which is a great idea, especially if you get lots of sore throats. It's a wonderful idea. Now, somebody else asked about charming a piece of jewellery, dedicating maybe a pendant or something like that to breed to wear as a protection talisman or something like that. And absolutely, it's a wonderful idea. And actually, it's one of the easiest things you can do, because all you need to do is, if you have a piece of jewelry, if you have something, a bead or a necklace or pendant, jewelry, ring, whatever it might be, you simply leave it outside with your brat brideogue. And as breed passes over it, and as she touches upon as the dew falls upon your item, it will be blessed. Just make sure to clean it beforehand. Now, when I say clean it, I don't mean give it a wash. I mean spiritually clean it. So smudge it maybe a little bit, or leave it out under full moon, or well, the full moon was for here anyway. It was there the other day, so a bit late now. But give it a good cleanse first, and leave it out that night, and it will be imbued with breeds energy. My daughter Heather also reminded me that I had forgotten to mention the beautifying powers of the dew on Imbolg morn. For an old crone like me, I don't really care too much. But my young daughters, what they would do on Imbolg morning, that they would go out and they would run their hands through the grass and wash their face with the dew. Um, the thought again being, I mean, Breed is in her maiden form at this time of the year. So the idea is that you're taking some of that beautiful maiden energy, you wash your face with it, and you should look younger and brighter and more lively and full of potential and all of that. Um, not like somebody who drinks too much red wine and smokes cigarettes when she shouldn't and eats too much chocolate. So yeah, so if you want, get out there and wash your face in the dew on Imbolg morning. Um, the next question, somebody asked about, is it worthwhile coming to Ireland for St. Bridget's Day? I'm going to be honest with you and say probably not yet. Not yet. St. Bridget's Day they made it a public holiday last year, an official public holiday. There was always a religious holiday here, but it was an official public holiday last year. And there are growing events across the country. I'm involved in 3 myself this year. So there are events going on. But if you look at the bigger picture, it is quite grey and cold in Ireland at this time of the year. There isn't that much on. It's not really the weather that you would get outside and go walking or exploring cities in. Like right now, it is absolutely lashing rain outside, which is fairly normal for this time of the year. So if you have a particular a particularly love for St. Bridget, then absolutely, yeah, come ahead, nothing stopping you. But if I was traveling to Ireland, this isn't the time of year that I would want to travel. I mean, it's still, okay, the dawn is rising now. The sun rises at about between 8 and half 8 in the morning, and we're now, I think it's like 5:30, 6 or thereabouts before it starts to get dark. So that's great, but still you've got very limited hours of touring time and things like that. So I wouldn't suggest it. However, I would suggest coming for St. Bridget's Day over Paddy's Day or St. Patrick's Day, because that's just basically a massive piss up in Dublin and a parade put on for visitors. So Paddy's Day in Ireland, St. Patrick's Day in Ireland is pretty crap. We don't really celebrate it here. It is purely an international holiday, really. There's a local parade with the school kids, and then everybody goes home after outside of Dublin. So, I come for St. Bridget's Day over St. Patrick's Day. But if I was choosing, I would wait, a little bit later in the year, come when the weather's a little bit better. The next question was about spellings. One of the listeners was getting a little bit caught up with Imbolc versus Imbolg and Breed versus Bridget. So as you may have noticed, I'm interchanging constantly. 1 minute she's saying Bridget, the next minute she's Breed. I grew up in Ireland, obviously, so St. Bridget was a huge part of my childhood. She has always been in all of our lives here in Ireland. She is part of all of our lives, St. Bridget. Breed is the Irish spelling for Bridget. So my own daughter Heather, her name is Heather Breed, so it's just the Irish spelling. My grandmother was called Bridget, but she was known as Bridie. So there's lots of different names. We have some great nicknames for people here as well. We like to put nicknames on everything. We like to shorten names and stuff. So I really wouldn't get too caught up with having the correct name for her, because at the end of the day, what you have to remember is that while it is a name today, it wasn't always a name. It was a title. It was more akin to Your Highness or something like that. It means the exalted one. So a lot of scholars talk about maybe that this was a title given to priestesses, or a title given to a number of different goddesses. we are really going back into the literal mists of time. We have no idea. But what I can tell you is, like Imbolc and Imbolg. Well, Imbolc is with the C is just the old Irish spelling, and Imbolg with the G is a more modern spelling in the Irish language. But Breed and Bridget and Imbolg, like they're all part of the Irish language, which is an absolutely ancient language. It's one of the oldest. It's up there with Latin, and it's a very ancient, very very ancient language. So it evolves. Languages evolve, and spellings change all the time. So I really wouldn't get too worried about it. I think for a lot of people, there is this like little hangover from more structured religions, where you're in trouble if you get something wrong. This is not like that. It they you know you're they're not the gods are not going to care if you call them the wrong name. They really don't care. So I wouldn't worry about it. It's like a tree doesn't care if you call it the wrong name. So it's just a title, and feel free to run with it whatever way you want, whatever feels natural to you. Um, the next question then was just a kind of a small little question. Wasn't even a question, more of a comment, but it was just talking about the colors that, because this person wanted to put up some decorations around their house, kind of like Christmas time or whatever, which I think is really cool. First of all, I think that's really cool. And we were talking about how Easter colors really tie in with Imbolc colors as well. So first of all, Easter gets its name from Istra, a Viking goddess, a Norse goddess. She was the Norse version of Breed, if you want. She was their spring goddess, Istra, who turned a hare, which is chicken, into a hare. And a hare has always been seen as a symbol of fertility. And this hare lops off into the bushes and starts laying eggs, because essentially it's a chicken in a hare's body. So it starts laying eggs to the merriment of the local children, who go off and catch or find these magical eggs. So again, we're tying in with fertility and new beginnings and fresh things. So the colors and the things you might use around the house are the same things you might use at Easter. So things like eggs and little baby chicks, and colors like yellows and pale strong greens and pinks and blues and things. So spring colors. Now, for the rest of you, don't feel like you have to decorate the house. Like, literally, this is it. This is literally all I do for St. Bridget's Day or for Imbolc. I'll do this, and I'll have my milk and my cheese and my butter and things like that, and some fish, because I like to eat. But literally, this is all I'll do. So and the Bradbury dog as well, but they go out together, so I don't decorate the house. In fact, at this time of the year, I am trying to squeeze in time to do a spring clean after Christmas. The last thing I want to do is put up more decorations. I've only just got the Christmas decorations into the attic, so don't feel like you have to. But for those of you who are amazing, go for it. There's no rights or wrongs here. If you want to decorate the house for Imbolc, go for it, because I think it's a lovely idea. So there's our Q&A done. And again, thank you very much for joining me for the Imbolc talk. I apologize again for my technical issues. I promise this will be the last time, because I have invested in some small scale equipment that should make my life anywhere a lot easier, and your viewing pleasure a lot better as well, because it'll actually work, and the sound will work, and the picture will work. And with that, I'm going to make a little small announcement, because I am part of the reason why I'm getting this equipment is because I'm going to start launching some online courses very, very soon. The written aspects are finished. It's just the videos I have to record. But as you can see, when I'm sitting here quietly in the woods behind me, the videos go a lot better. So if you want to learn more about practical paganism, the various elements and how to harness them in your life, the trees, the different types of trees that we have, and I'm going to be doing a one
topic, one tree per topic. So, for example, everything about the oak, and including its links to St. Bridget. All of those will be available very, very soon.